So I have the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, the Huawei Mate XS2, the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2, and the Huawei Mate X2. In this video, I'm going to compare them, their design, the fold mechanisms, the crease, thickness, weights, outer screens, inner screens, charge time, performance, thermal throttling, and battery life, including also the cameras. So let's compare this Z Fold 4. Why I think the design is starting to look quite dated now. They've been reusing it, of course, for many years now, and for me, that is showing its age. So it's got a very narrow screen. The outer screen I'm not particularly a fan of because it just makes, when you type on the keyboard, a little more difficult. You can't really use the outer screen as a normal phone, whereas other models that I've also pointed out in my first video, like this one, the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2, we have a normal sized outer screen here, and it just makes it a lot better to type on when you're typing on the keyboard. So you can have your Gboard there, and in hand it feels good. So this one, when you fold it, as you see here, it folds flat. There is no ugly gap there like you see here. Now I was just thinking before, the crease on this one too is a little more prominent. You can see it more, especially if I just turn the screen off at certain angles. You see it's quite a deep crease that we have with the Z Fold 4. And with the Xiaomi, you notice it, you still see the crease, of course. You don't, on any of these phones, you don't really see the crease unless you're looking right at it at an angle. Then you see it, but looking at it directly, you don't really notice as much. So you see here, we still have, yes, a crease which is not as deep, but you still do notice it. Other phones, for example, like this one right here, this is the champion when it comes to design. It's an outer fold. This is the Huawei Mate XS2. Now, the Mate XS2, because of the outer fold design, has that advantage of the crease. You barely really see it. Like here, it's looking bad, but this is the least prominent crease, and when you run your finger over it, it's the one you feel the least too as well. And when you're looking at it straight on, you barely notice it. It's also the lightest and the thinnest of all of the foldables that I've been testing out. It's 5.4 millimeters, which unfolded, so is this one. Sorry, so is the Xiaomi Fold Mix 2. It's very, very thin, but this one is only 255 grams versus 262 or 63, so they're a little bit heavier. Now what I'll do is just open them up so you can see, opened up state. This is where the Fold 2 again, the hardware to me is starting to look a little bit dated of just how thick this really is, this one. So it is, when you unfold it, 6.3 versus 5.4. And I'll just get my camera to focus on that. You see here the difference now when we're looking at them that, yes, a lot slimmer the other foldables that are around. And I'll just get the, here we go. You can see there with the Z Fold 4 up against the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2. There is a big difference in the weights and just how they open. Now, mechanism-wise, I like the feel of the Xiaomi. I think it feels really good. I like the way that the last part is spring-loaded. It feels quite strong when it is open. But what happens is that with the other model, well, the Z Fold, sorry, that it doesn't do that, okay? So the reason why it doesn't do that, because of the flex mode. You do have flex mode with this, but you need to use the case. And even the older, dated, but still, I think, very good. This one here is the Mate X2 from Huawei. This one has another hinge that I think feels still better than a Z Fold 3, Z Fold 4. When it's open, it feels very, very strong. Really solid build to it. All metal frame too, of course, across all of these phones. And you see the crease on that one. It's still noticeable, but not as bad too. And not as deep as what we have with that Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4. So you see those two together. Those ones are the chunkier models now, giving way to the newer, lighter designs we have coming through. Now with the cameras between these two here, they both have 50 megapixel main cameras, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide with the Z Fold 4. 3 times optic versus 2 times optic. The Xiaomi here has like a branding, but it really doesn't help it at all because it's probably the worst out of all the cameras with these ones. Again, 50 megapixel, 13 megapixel ultra wide with the Huawei Mate XS2, and it does have a 10 megapixel cover camera, even though, well, it's an in-screen camera. So it does have an in-screen camera, but one thing that it is missing from the Xiaomi is you don't have an in-screen camera with its screen, okay? Which is, yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate, but you're not really missing out on too much because the inner camera here with the Z Fold 4, that's an under-display camera. So it's only 4 megapixels, and here is a sample of it now. And for an under-display camera, the quality isn't too bad, as you can see here for video. It's got electronic image stabilization. Unfortunately, maximum resolution is only 1080p, 30 frames per second, or 60 frames per second. So not brilliant quality, but it's good to have this option with the inside larger screen. I wanted to talk a little bit more about these inner screens, multitasking, and what it's like to do split screen floating windows on both of them. So we have an 8.0 2-inch size screen here with the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2. And I like the larger size. I'm a tablet person. I like the larger size. I just think it's a little more practical. I also think the screen is slightly better. It tops out at 1300 nits maximum brightness versus, I believe it's 1100 or 1200. It's just slightly brighter. Both of them are 120 hertz. Both of them are very fluid. It is just a nice size to be using here, and how light it is and how thin compared to the Z Fold 4. So both of them do support split screen app modes. You can run, as you can see, like this, side by side or a floating window. You can do it on both of them. So they're very similar there when it comes to multitasking. However, Samsung's got a lot more years of experience with foldables. Their software is definitely more tuned, I feel, for foldables for multitasking. You do get flex mode, but you also do have flex mode on, well, this particular tablet here as well. And when you start to use it, the screen will then swap over. But you do need to use the case for it in order for it to hold itself up, because it's going to want to always pop open. So you can use the case. It will go over into flex mode, but flex mode is nowhere near as good as what we do have with, of course, the Z Fold. You see that when you're running YouTube, if I go into just a video right here, that as soon as you play that video, it will go into the flex mode. So you can type the comments. As soon as it goes out, it will then resize the screen for it. But it's nowhere near as good as what, of course, you have with the Z Fold 4 here. So a definite win here for the software when it comes to optimization, everything, and performance on the Z Fold just seems to be so much better. And I haven't really noticed any lags. I'm on a new update, on firmware update. I've already had a couple of firmware updates with this. But I do notice more stutters, lags coming through with the Xiaomi, even though they both run the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. They both have 12 gigabytes of RAM. There are some definite differences, but the hardware, I think, still is a lot nicer. The screen size, the fold, the way it folds, the thinness, thickness, the crease, better on this model, but you can't touch it when it comes to software compared to the Z Fold. Then next to the Huawei Mate XS2 with its outer fold screen. Again, I think the screen and the size may be a little bit better on this model. The weight and the fact that we do have that little lip here does make it quite nice to hold it. And the outer fold means that when you run your fingers over the middle, you barely notice anything there at all compared to, you notice a ridge with the Z Fold. So the screens on both of them, they are a similar kind of brightness. Both of them look good, both 120 hertz. And you can do, again, the same thing, multitasking. And with the Huawei, the software doesn't seem, again, quite as well optimized for multitasking. It doesn't have the same kind of setup that you do get with the Z Fold 4. So I can't publish this video without mentioning those extras, of course, that the Z Fold 4 does have. Stylus support, so it's a big one. For people who need to use a stylus, this is the foldable to get, of course. Now, the annoying thing is that still we don't have any place to put it. Now, you need to buy a case that has the silo for it that you slot the stylus into. That makes it even more chunky. It's just one of those things that I hope with future models they can correct and fix. We do also have an IP rating, which none of the other foldables do have. They don't have IP ratings. And I noticed too that the stylus is definitely working a lot better than what I remember from the Fold 3. When you go over areas, for example, like where the creases, it doesn't seem to be affected that much by it. Occasionally you might notice a few little hiccups, but it tends to be really quite good there. We also have video out with this model, and you've got their desktop mode. So you don't have a desktop mode or even video out with the the Mix Fold 2. The Huawei's, though, however, they do support video out, and they do have their own desktop mode. You can also do it wirelessly. Oh, and the other thing, too, is that the Z Fold 4 has wireless charging. These other foldables don't. What about the audio quality? So I've got the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2 here. We have the Huawei Mate XS2, and then the Galaxy Z Fold 4. I'm going to play them in this order. So this one, then this one, all at 100% volume. We'll have a listen to which one sounds the best. And that was really interesting. So the Xiaomi just couldn't compete with either of these. It was quite poor, actually. The Xiaomi speakers are not great. So I think the best was the Mate XS2. It just seemed a little bit louder and slightly more richer. And because I've got three phones here, it's hard to game on all three at the same time. So I thought it'd be the best to do a throttling test. So what I'll do is trigger them at the same time here. Every single phone here has all the applications in the background all killed off. So only 3D Mark is running. So we do have Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1s versus Snapdragon 888. So this is old school, a couple of generations old now. But we'll see how it does fare, because I noticed that the Xiaomi in my other review actually probably wouldn't be able to complete this test because it overheated. Hopefully it won't happen now because it does have a patch. I'll see if I can do this all at the same time too. So 1, 2, 3. Well, that did not work out too well for the Xiaomi. It ended up overheating at approximately the 12, 13 minute mark. You don't ever want to see that. So terrible performance there from the Xiaomi. Okay, they just finished up. The Xiaomi Mix Fold 2 crashed and burned. That's completely disqualified out of it. Just couldn't even finish the test. Useless. So it did throttle down almost 40% on the Mate XS2 here. And then we have well over 40% with the Z Fold 4. But how are they faring here temperature-wise? So we can see that's getting up to 34 on the front of the screen right here and 35, similar temperatures. Just have a look at the backs of them right now. About the same, so 35 there, and slightly warmer, 38 degrees on the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4. So not a good result really on both, because they throttled quite a bit there. So that's sad to see, but at least they are still running. You can't say the same about this here. That's a complete failure from Xiaomi. They just have not got the thermals sorted out yet. Then the charge times with our phones here, the Samsung is clearly falling behind. So the Z Fold 4 took about an hour and a half. I couldn't record it with Antutu correctly because at 75%, it paused for a fraction, then started to charge again for some reason, whereas the other phones did not do that. So it took just 44 minutes to charge the Mate XS2, 41 minutes for the Mix Fold 2, and 72 minutes here for the Mate X2. Then the Antutu scores. So we got 670,000 points here with the Mate X2, 879,000 with the Mix Fold 2, but you can see it stated that the UX score is abnormal. So perhaps it detected some cheating there on Xiaomi's behalf, trying to up that score. Very similar score too to, of course, the Snapdragon 8 Plus powered Gen 1 Z Fold 4. So that got a very similar score. They both got 12 gigabytes of RAM, and then the Snapdragon 888 got 779,000 points. You can see that it was the Z Fold 4 that heated up the most, but that doesn't really matter because it's, of course, the Mix Fold 2 that if you game after about 20 minutes, not even that, about 13 minutes, it overheats, which is completely useless. And then the battery life, this one is a big surprise here. So the Z Fold 4 just dominated. The battery life test is a fixed one to keep it fair, because imagine if I was using these phones and I gamed on one 30 minutes longer than the other, or I was using Twitter longer on one or less, it would not be a fair way to do it. So it's the same looping benchmark with the same brightness, and when I did run this battery test, I ran it with the screens unfolded in their larger screen state. So 9 hours and 1 minute. That's incredible battery runtime there from the Z Fold 4. In fact, it's better than this. My S22 Ultra, the Exynos version, I only get around about, 6 hours of on-screen time with it, just. And this, I can get around about 7. almost 6 hours with the Mate XS2, and then we have 7 hours and 40 minutes with the Mix Fold 2, and almost 7 hours. But that's only at 90 hertz, the Mate X2. So real world times that I'm getting around about 6.5 hours. I only get about almost 6 now. The newest patch did improve the battery life from Xiaomi, and I get around about just over 5 and around, close to 7 hours with the Z Fold. But the Z Fold has amazing battery life for a foldable. I think so. And, well, the results speak for themselves here. You can see it just dominated here, completely destroying the other phones. Over to video samples. I'll start out with the Z Fold 4. So this is the ultra-wide camera. 12 megapixels. It's got electronic image stabilization, and by far I think the Samsung, the Z Fold 4, has the best video quality. It also has the best audio quality out of all of these folds that I'm testing. This is the main camera now, which is 50 megapixels. It has optical image stabilization and of course electronic, and then we do even have a 3 times zoom here. So I'm using the rear camera now just as a selfie camera, and of course you don't have to use it like this as a selfie. You could use the outer camera too, which is 10 megapixels, and you can see good quality. When I pan around, it also exhibits the least judder out of all of the fold phones I'm testing. So the best video quality, hands down, is the Samsung. And the Xiaomi, which has, to me, the poorest of the video quality. The colors tend to be quite off. They can be very red, a little bit too lively, too punchy. So this is the main, again, 50 megapixel camera. So all 3 of them have 50 megapixel main sensors on the rear. I can pull back and go over to the ultra wide 13 megapixels, and you see how the colors are completely different here to the main camera. There's a huge difference between them. So electronic and optical, well, with the optical with the main sensor, but electronic just here now with the ultra wide. And it's okay, this quality, but the ultra wide is definitely the weaker camera of them all. And then you can apply a little bit of zoom. You see how the colors changed again completely. So the Xiaomi not looking so good there, and then it changes over to then the 2 times optical camera, which I would not be using for video. Now audio is not so good on the Xiaomi. It's only 96 kilobits per second audio bitrate, which is just downright poor, disappointing. Why do they keep doing this? So the worst quality on the Mix Fold 2 for video. So with the rear cameras of the Mate XS2, it's the main 50 megapixel sensor. We have an 8 megapixel 3 times optical, and then a 13 megapixel ultra wide. So this has electronic and optical image stabilization, this 50 megapixel sensor. Quality is looking pretty good. When I move about, I've noticed this. You see how there's a little bit more judder coming through? Certainly more than the Samsung Z Fold that I have noticed here, but overall pretty good quality. The audio isn't bad either here with it. Certainly better than the Xiaomi. And now I'll just show you what the ultra wide and zoom cameras look like with the Mate XS2. So okay quality, but definitely not as good as that main camera. So just zoom in now to once you go up to a 1 times, you see that it definitely swaps over. So that's 0.9, 0.9, and then now 1. See how it changes. And if we zoom in, it's not actually going to be using the 3 times optical camera. I believe it just keeps using the 50 megapixel camera with the zoom. There doesn't seem to be any transition, and the quality, well, you can see that that's clearly just digital from that main 50 megapixel camera with the Mate XS2. Over to stills now. So this is a portrait shot, and you can see it's either between the Mate XS2 or the Fold 4. I do like the details that are captured with the Fold 4. This is the 3 times mode. And when you crop in, you see that the shadows, the highlights on my daughter's face here look a little bit better on the X2, but less detail compared to the Fold 4. So I'll draw this one for portrait shots. Zoom cameras now, so there's a big difference here. The Mate XS2 clearly looks better to me. The exposure, it captures more detail. The Xiaomi just looks terrible. Not good here. You can see this is my other cat, Wapo. Definitely the Mate XS2 took this photo with the most details and best exposure. And another photo, this is the now main camera again. You can see it's either between the Fold 4 or the XS2. I think almost a draw here, but maybe the Mate XS2 just has more details in the whites. Ultra-wide cameras now. So I think this here went just to the Mate XS2, but very close with the Fold 4. But when you crop in, you see that I think it captured the plants here on the left of the photo a little better. And then low light, again, either between the Fold 4 or the XS2. Now notice with the XS2 here, that it seems to have less artifacts and noise compared to the Fold 4, but the Fold 4 does a better job at capturing the handrail, but I got to give the low light win to the Mate XS2. So my first video of the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2, I did say that it has killer hardware, that it's a Z Fold killer. I stand by that. The hardware it's a lot thinner, as I've pointed out. It's so much thinner, it's lighter, it looks a lot better, the screen to me. It's slightly brighter as well. It's just a better experience overall when you feel it. The hinge as well, I like the feel of it. Feels really solid. Metal frame, they're all got metal frames around them too. And the outer screen is the big one. The outer screen is like using an S22 Ultra. Well, almost. Whereas this design here from Samsung, I think it's time that they just updated this because it's too narrow. It's not that usable. The hinge doesn't feel as good. The crease is worse. So that is why I say this hardware is better, but then when it comes to the software side of things, well, no contest whatsoever there. The One UI here with Samsung, so much better. It's more optimized for multitasking, for your split screen, windowed use. You've got DeX, wireless charging, you have video out, which that model's lacking, and of course the stylus support there too is another. So there's a lot of things going for this model here. It's just starting to feel a bit old and dated, this design, compared to other models. However, it didn't have the best loudspeakers and it doesn't have the best crease. That goes to this fantastic design here. I really do love the outer fold design of the Huawei Mate XS2. It has almost barely any noticeable crease. When you take a look at it, certain angles, it's very hard to tell. Compared to these other foldables, you really don't see it. Running my finger over it, you can feel it slightly. Oh, but you can feel it so much more on the Z Fold. Yes, this outer fold, of course, is going to be a little bit more prone to damage. You can scratch the back of the screen, which is one side of the screen when you've got it opened. If it lands on that corner, it could easily break, but I think all of these phones are very fragile as it is anyway, as it stands. Really good speakers on this. It is, of course, the lightest foldable out of this group and the thinnest too, when it's folded up and everything. So really nice design there out of the Mate XS. So there we go, the comparison between these foldables. I think most people probably knew the outcome, that you cannot beat the software and the features on offer with the Z Fold 4. So thanks a lot for watching this video. Do check out my more in-depth video if you're interested of the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2.